Oh, g'day, it's Tim Neal here from precisionagriculture.com.au. This is the first of three sections on controlled traffic farming. Section 1, we're going to talk about, where did controlled traffic farming originate from? Where's this thinking about controlled traffic? It's now one of the most adopted technologies in Australia. What led to this sort of start and adoption? So the first section, we're going to talk about the background of soil compaction and the results from studies showing the detrimental effects of soil compaction. So let's go and have a look now at some of the slides on why we actually got to this point of controlled traffic farming. We know that 90% of the soil damage that's done by a tyre is done in the first pass, and if you did four more passes after that, it would only make 10% more damage. So the other thing we know is that even in the best no-till, wheels are going to cover at least 40% of your ground. So I've done thousands of spreadsheets on everyone's gear, looking at how much percentage wheel tracks they got, and never got better than 40%. And we've also done work in potatoes in Tasmania, and every inch is driven over 2.5 times in a potato crop. And some of the best soils in Australia, I reckon. We know that it affects yield, and I've talked about that already with some yield losses. You talk to Neil Johansson, he reckons it's 100% yield loss from compaction if you don't get a crop planted. It's 100% loss, but typically in research they show about 15 to 20% yield loss from straight compaction. I guess the thing is that controlled traffic will help get into no-till. We had guys like McAllister that really had trouble doing no-till because of the ruts. So they saw no other way to do it but to put all their field traffic in one area. We're trying to reduce soil erosion and also reduce diesel use, as I've mentioned. We typically in research they found years ago that basically half the horsepower was going into putting down tracks and lifting them back up again with the tine, and we always thought that was just sort of research data. But now with people with fuel flow meters, we've actually had that in the field where they drive along the tracks, look at the fuel flow, and then hop off the tracks, and it doubles, get back on again. So it is true that you can significantly reduce diesel use. Compaction is everywhere. It's just normally you can't see it. So this photo shows where a flood's gone over and taken all of the topsoil off and just left the compacted areas left. And you've probably seen Adrian Ross's one year, we had the same sort of thing, and you've probably seen a few around too. In fact, compaction saves soil in this situation. You often get this platey structure where you'll get plates almost stacked on top of each other, and the trouble is it's where you get your right angle root disease, where that hits those plates and goes sideways. So, plants trying to access that nutrients and water based in that clod are going to have real trouble. And it's interesting, this is a minimum till system where we had 4 bits of gear, cultivator, tractor, truck and spray rig, a sowing rig, and a combine or harvester. And so we just put all the wheel tracks from each machine in this program we've got, and each colour represents a different wheel pass. And you can see that it doesn't take long for the paddock to get covered in wheels. It's 70% at some point in time is driven over in that crop by a wheel. If we were to look at that in black and white, and you guys probably don't do much cross-working here, but if we start cross-working that paddock or changing directions, you can see that things get a bit black, and after a while you might change direction again, and you end up with you've driven over everything before you know it. And this is a sort of assuming that you've got guidance systems as well. So this assumes no overlap, no wobbles, and you start on the same side of the fence every time. So you can quickly get up pretty high without you really even realising it. So we're trying to aim for this, where you get down to say 10%, 15%, coming down from sort of 70 to that is what we're aiming for. I often get asked, do tracks solve all the compaction problems? We had lots of discussions in the early days with Caterpillar about that tracks solve the compaction problems of the world. Well, this is some work that's done by Claas, trying to sell the TerraTracks that we were just talking about. And this is off the website, so you can actually get this data, but I think it's almost self-defeating a bit, is that this is the depth of soil compaction down to 600 millimetres, and this is the actual amount of compaction or the deformation. They just measured the millimetres of squashing. And while it's reduced basically all the way down because of surface area, in reality, deep compaction is done by the weight of the machine, and shallow compaction is done by the pressure of the tyre. So these exhibit very low ground pressures, but sometimes though too, where your idlers are, say you've got a John Deere track machine, where your idlers are can be sort of peak loads, and they might say that the whole thing's 2 psi, but you will get these peak loads under idlers and under the main drive. So it's not always as easy as it makes out, but typically, yeah, you're still getting deep damage, and we measured the same sort of depth of damage on the downs. This work's been done in Europe, but they're trying to sell TerraTracks. And like, I support tracks, absolutely, but they don't solve compaction problems. And similarly, they've done some, this is the same, they were trying to say that tracks are better than wide tyres. So here's a 900 tyre, an 800 tyre and a 680, those 3 columns. Again, it doesn't really make much difference. So total weight determines the depth of compaction. So the heavier the machine, the more deeper it's going to go. Also, we had some questions yesterday about organic carbon. So if I had a soil high in organic carbon, could it resist some of this? And basically, unless you're farming a peat bog like what you would in Canada, then essentially no. 2% organic carbon is not going to do anything to a 30-tonne header. You've seen this photo before about compaction. Also, this is one of our clients in New South Wales, but he's seeing about a 50% reduction in diesel use per hour. So on the machines operating, fuel use per hour is reduced considerably, and those tracks get like concrete, They don't sink like you do in these soils up here, but it's amazing how hard they get and how soft this soil gets, even though there's not much deformation. This is Neil's place, where we had a field day and we lined up all the bits of gear, and you can see Neil's now running the spray rig, the tractor, the air cart and the header we're standing on, all on the same set of tracks, all 40 feet, all matched up. He's now all on guidance systems as well. And you don't dare to count how much dollars is sitting in that row of equipment there. It's not real cheap. Yeah, the cultivator wheels. Yeah, no, generally anything less than a tonne's not going to be a problem. But it's funny, we had a guy in Victoria that started in control traffic, and then after a few years he noticed the wheels of the wing wheels actually doing more damage. So it wasn't until the soil softened up a bit that stood out. So he was moving towards the 3-point linkage sort of stuff to get away from those wing wheels. But generally they're not going to cause much damage, because they haven't got much weight, so the compaction's not going to go deep. But they run high pressure, don't you? 25 psi, so running pretty high psi, so it'll do a bit of surface damage, but won't go deep. This is we've done quite a few of these now, these 500 wide tyres. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but if you're interested in reducing compacted area again, you can do this. Like I said, we've had one guy for 10 years now on these tyres. They're a VA 500, and they're a special industrial tyre essentially. They're load rated to 9.8 tonnes per tyre, which is not what most agricultural tyres would be anywhere near loaded to that. So, and again, that's on a brand new header when we put those on. This year we went back to the bigger flotation tyres because of the wet harvest, so don't throw them away. But a set of these will set you back 10 grand, which is pretty good buying considering that includes the rims, custom made rims from Titan Rims. They make them for 2.5 grand a side, and the tyres are 2.5 grand a side, which actually is fairly cheap for a tyre on a header from what other people are telling me anyway. So it's not that expensive, but yeah, you sort of got to be super committed to follow through with that. But there's also contractors running these tyres, and they've also used extensively in irrigation country as well, just to fit down the narrow rows. Used in the rice country as well, just for and different irrigation areas. But it will cut deeper in a wetter season, won't it? So I guess you've got to be prepared for that. And that's where the tracks really shine.